Growing up, my mother didn't talk about Sri Lanka. I was born there, but I've been in Australia since I was 3, so I had a very Australian upbringing. Hit my kind of late 20s and realised that I knew more about how World War II broke out than I knew about Sri Lankan history. And I didn't really feel like I could go forward without knowing my past and my family's past. At that point, I didn't know it was even a play or anything. I just wanted to find out more.
Will you move back home now?
Amma.
You have been in Bondi for 6 months?
Coogee, Amma. Bondi's full of backpackers.
In Act 1, we meet a mother and a son who clearly love each other very much, but aren't really having a functional relationship.
Why are you wearing thongs? You should be wearing
We don't
shoes.
have to fight.
You get a sense of this real lack of awareness on the son's part of how the hell he got to Australia. And then there's a phone call from Colombo, and it completely turns the mother and son's life upside down, and it forces them to figure out whether or not they can be with each other and whether the mother can confront her past. And it plunges us over Acts 2 and 3 into a really epic story through 4 generations of this family, through multiple decades of Sri Lanka. We learn about the story of this family and how they arrived in Australia.
He always had a passion for the theatre. He got 99.6, right? And I didn't believe it, so I actually had to ring up. I think till Counting and Cracking came along, my brother would still ask him when he was getting a real job. I remember when I went in for the first reading, and my son introduced me, and he said, "That's my mum." And he turned around and told her, but I'm not responsible for anything she says.
Didn't change anything. She still ordered me around everywhere and I still disobeyed her. My mother's gone during the development of this play from someone who refused to talk about Sri Lanka to someone who now talks about it really often. She read early drafts. She came to showings and sat in the corner of a room, and that allowed her a space to start thinking about this stuff in a very deep way without anyone having to confront her about it.
I had just blocked it off. I just built a huge wall around myself and started building a new life for myself here. We were not refugees, but we still fled the country. And that is an awful feeling. It's an awful, awful feeling. Nobody wants to leave their homeland. Nobody does.
If you read about Sri Lankan history in the media or in history books, it's typically talked about as a war between Tamils and Sinhalese, and there being a divide between these two races. But talking to all these different Sri Lankans, a different picture emerged of Sri Lanka. There was a history of political and community leaders utilising the politics of division to create differences where there weren't any. And so then it became about how to tell that story.
This is not who we are. Sri Lanka is one Sri Lanka is one country with many classes and creeds within it.
It's a cautionary tale for us in the West. We can't assume that democracy will just happen automatically. It's very important to nip that stuff in the bud before those more catastrophic consequences come into play. It took 4 years to cast this show. There were 16 actors from 6 different countries. Many of them have lived experience that is quite similar to what happens to that character in the play.
That cast is amazing. And I think they themselves realize that through this script and this play, they have themselves have created something very special. But they're crazy, they're absolutely crazy. The stupid WhatsApp goes on to 2 o'clock in the morning. They drive me nuts because I don't know how to off it half the time.
I would love to take this play to Sri Lanka. It would need the current government to stay in power. But what's been incredible is the Sri Lankan artists want to do it. You know, they're really keen for audiences in Sri Lanka to see the play as a way of understanding their own country's history. Everything about migration is bittersweet. All your joy is about seeing your children succeed or seeing your family settle in a new place is always going to be tinged with the home that you've lost. And I've been really proud of how my community has been able to sit with that bittersweetness and embrace this show.